So, hi everyone, welcome to this information evening to talk about the Graduate Certificate of Applied Coaching. My name is Bea Pennell and I'll be taking you through this presentation. So just a little bit of housekeeping at the beginning. Feel free to contact me via the chat box. I've got it open here and I'll be touching base with any comments or questions that you might have as I go through this presentation. And at this stage, we'll keep everyone on mute. It's probably the easiest way to do that. And but we might have the opportunity for some Q&A at the very end. All right. So before we start, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which our college teaches. Currently, I'm on Gadigal land. I would like to pay my respect to the elders, past and present, and extend my respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples listening today. So I'd also like to introduce our course advisors who are online here with me. So we've got Nick Hart, and you can see here's Nick's email if you wanted to contact him, and Miles Hindle and his email. So you can ask questions, as I mentioned, in the chat box. You can also contact them directly if you have any questions. So hi, Nick and Miles. I presume, I think I've seen you somewhere. Yes, on our, there's Miles. So thank you. Oh, it's Casey as well, National Course Advisors. Love to answer any questions. So post any questions and yes, we'll have Casey, David and Miles. It is.
My mistake. It's actually me and Nick. It's not David and Casey. I copied and pasted without editing.
Okay, it is you and Nick. All right, great, Miles. So yeah, Nick and Miles are online to answer any questions you have. Okay, thank you. All right, so what we're going to cover in this next hour, it's actually will go pretty quickly, but I wanted to give you a bit of an overview of ACAP if you are not familiar with the Australian College of Applied Psychology. And then I just wanted to give you a bit of a context. This is one of the ways that my brain works. Hopefully it also makes sense to you. Rather than just diving into this course, is what is this course and what is this idea of coaching and psychology combined? I'll just give you a brief kind of explanation. And also to ask that kind of more deeper question, why would you want to study something like this? And I really wanted to make sure that there was some content in this presentation that actually might help you in your everyday life. So I've got two just really simple ideas that I'll throw out there. Some of them you might be familiar with, but my intention is that you'll at least take away from here a couple of different resources, which is a really key part of the coaching course actually, is that you learn some really great resources for navigating your own life, this idea of coaching yourself and maybe even coaching friends and family. It can be a really great skill to have. So I'll give you a couple of pointers and then I'll talk in more detail about the actual course, make sure there's some opportunity for Q&A. I ran a similar session of this course at lunchtime today, and so even some of the Q&A that came from that I've built into here to make sure that as much as possible I'm answering all the different kinds of questions you'll have. Before we start, just wanted to check if anyone has any quick questions or comments for me. I'll just check in on the chat box and then we'll dive in. No, all right, great, ready to go. So just a really quick little conversation about me. So I'm the Associate Professor of Coaching here at ACAP. I have developed this graduate certificate in applied coaching. My background is in leadership, coaching, counselling, psychology. I've got a PhD in adult development. I work as an executive coach and consult into organisations really focusing on this idea of cultural change, bringing about a coaching culture or a feedback culture or a strength-based culture in work. So I've worked with thousands of people, and also I'm doing and active with my academic research, looking at neuroscience and coaching. And my focus is actually on helping people to flourish, to develop leadership skills, to make themselves more highly skilled, to therefore actually make the world a better place. That's a real thing that inspires me to get out of bed in the morning. And that is actually kind of embedded, a lot of that is embedded in the coaching course that we've got, is really the practical, okay, what does this mean? How do we apply it? How do we actually make a difference in people's lives? So an overview as to ACAP for those of you who might not be familiar with the Australian College of Applied Psychology. We've been delivering specialist courses since 1983. I've actually forgotten the maths, but it's a long time. And actually, I think we're almost up to nearly 40 years. So we're a national provider. We have campuses in Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Adelaide, Perth, and now recently in Byron Bay. We have courses in psychology, counselling, criminology, social work, coaching, and other courses are being developed all the time. We've had over 13,000 graduates, and it's quite extraordinary how many people I meet when I say that I work at ACAP. They said, I studied there, it's a great place. So there's a real college-like atmosphere that you'll find eventually when we all get back onto campuses around the country, a real lovely vibe that is a part of the ACAP environment. We also have, of course, the I always say QUILT, the QILT surveys, which are surveys that we do of students on their level of satisfaction in the course. And you can see here basically that we're above the national average in all the main factors: the quality of education, the teacher quality, the ability to develop skills, the support you get as students, and the learning resources. And I must say, every year we're constantly surveying, getting feedback from students and looking at ways to continually improve. And that's one of the things I really love about this place, is the real focus on what can we do better to serve students. And that's also certainly shown up with all the challenges we've had over COVID, with students working from home, studying from home, and just looking at different ways that students can be supported. And I'll unpack that in a little bit more detail as we go. Oh, thanks, Miles, for the maths there, 38 years. That's great to see. So why students choose ACAP? We have small class sizes, a real focus on personalised learning. This particular course is accredited. All the other courses of psychology and counselling and social work courses are accredited with those relevant bodies, but the coaching course is accredited with the International Coaching Federation. We're going through that process as I speak, and by the time any student that enrolls in this trimester, by the time you finish the course, your course will be certified. We've just got some basically administrative processes we have to follow with the ICF as we roll out this course. We have teachers with extensive industry experience. You know, the people that are teaching into this course, it's probably more like 15 years experience, more than 10. And so people that have that real sound academic knowledge, the theoretical knowledge, but very much the applied, what works when you're in front of people, coaching them, and really using stories and industry experience as a key part of our teaching, and using case studies and those kinds of things. There's 3 intakes a year, so if you're not quite ready even to start in 2 weeks' time, in February, we have another intake that'll be in May, and then again in September. And there's options depending if you're eligible or not for government help with this fee help if you're doing vet level courses, which this one is not, but there's also other type student loans and things available. And Miles and Nick will be able to help you with the details of those, what is you might be eligible for and what your options are there. So as mentioned in the QUILT scores, we'll really focus on student support. So we do have, when COVID dependent, we have on-campus workshops, but also online webinars. We've got at the moment a live Zoom reception for students. We've got academic support for essay writing, time management, research skills. There's individual consultations you can have with student learning support, but also there's an amazing amount of digital resources online. So, you know, if you need to know something about how to write an essay or referencing or whatever, someone's thought of it before you, and there'll be resources there. The other thing is, because the classes in this coaching course are live, then I'm kind of preempting one of my slides, but there's a real focus in the class in scaffolding your learning. So for those of you who may not have done study for a while or written an essay for a while, there's a real process in the class of setting you up and supporting you in a way so it won't freak you out. My intention always when I've been teaching, now for about 16 years, is that assignments support your learning and they're interesting and they're something you want to do rather than something that freaks you out and stresses you out. So there really is that focus on student support. Lizzie, your question I'll leave for Miles or Nick to answer, and I can come back to it a little bit later if that's okay. We also are an ally as part of the Pride in Diversity Network. We stand with the LGBTI plus community. We promote an inclusive environment for both work and study, and we have a real sense of positive advocacy. There's meetup sessions, COVID dependent, and if you're interested, there's the email address for the ACAP Pride. There's also a real focus within ACAP on supporting diverse cultures, people from all sorts of different backgrounds. And I really love working in an environment which is diverse, inclusive, multicultural, and I'm really proud of it. So I think that's a great part of ACAP as well. How to study your way at ACAP. So you can choose how you want to study and what combination works for you. We have these trimesters, which are in 13 weeks, and there's 3 of them a year. So it means that actually, as you'll see, you can get this graduate certificate done in 2 trimesters, which is in about 8 months. Whereas if we had a semester timetable, it would take you actually a lot longer to get things done. There's, of course, full-time, part-time options. At the moment, this course is being offered online. There might be the option to do some face-to-face delivery, but it's not likely that we'll be doing anything with face-to-face delivery at this stage in trimester 1. And each of the classes, I'll take you through the timetable. They're offered late afternoon, 4 till 7 p.m. Ideally to fit in with those of you who are working full time, although I know it's not super ideal if you've got kids and dinner and so on. But we're looking at other options for our timetable delivery in trimester 2 as well. Okay, so the graduate certificate in applied coaching, as mentioned, for those students who go through, it's 4 units and you will receive an ICF credential qualification. So we basically give you a kit of everything you need to then go and apply for your ICF registration, which means that you can call yourself an ICF certified coach, so an internationally certified coach. As mentioned, there's a real focus on applied knowledge right from the start. The very first class, you're going off and you're practicing different skills and looking at, okay, how does this show up when I'm working with a client? Or even how does this show up when I'm negotiating with my teenager, whether or not they can go out for the night? So there is a real lovely aspect of the coaching that it can help with your day-to-day life, which I really valued as well. So the focus in this course is about becoming a leadership coach. So you might end up working in private practice, as in seeing your own coaching clients, or you might work in an organisation. And I just wanted to sort of highlight that, so this course, the focus is on leadership coaching more so than life coaching. So life coaching courses tend to be shorter. They don't tend to be ICF credentialed. They tend to be more like at a workshop level. Lots of people are calling themselves life coaches. A leadership coach is basically, it's a different profession altogether. And there's a real focus on making sure that the skills we provide you with are at a professional level. So a big part of this course is about learning how to develop a coaching mindset and understand how to inspire people to change and lead. Okay, so Miles is your point of contact if you have any questions. Thanks for that, Nick. Okay, so what is coaching? I wanted to make sure I didn't presume that we all just knew what coaching is. So I really want to emphasize that coaching is a goal-focused conversation. It's a conversation with our coaching clients on what is it that you're wanting to change? What is it you're wanting to move towards? What do you want to do differently? And that's kind of different to a therapy kind of conversation. Therapy conversations, say counseling or psychology, don't tend to be as goal-focused. And the big part of coaching is we use questions to help the other person understand their own thinking and also their meaning making. So what meaning is someone attributing to a conflict, an issue around procrastination, an issue around lack of confidence? And so we do work with psychology. I'm going to touch on this in a minute. We use a lot of the tools that we've gained from now over 100 years of psychology and all that research to inform the coaching practice, so that we can understand the link between our thoughts, feelings, and behavior. And as the person starts to have greater insights as to what's driving their own feelings, what's driving their own thoughts, that definitely has a link in shifting behavior. So I'll unpack this in a little bit more detail. So two really simple tools I wanted to give you in terms of how coaching works. Some of you might already know this, but there's the GROW framework, which is used. It's quite famous, actually. And if you're interested in learning a bit more, that's definitely one to just check out on, say, YouTube. But the GROW framework is a framework that can inform any coaching session. I use it sometimes even with executives. They might not know that I'm following these steps, but in my mind, there's still this kind of way of thinking where I'm thinking about what is the goal for this particular conversation, this coaching conversation. The R in GROW stands for reality. So I'll ask my coaching client, what's going on for you right now? What are you noticing? What are you saying? What are you doing? What are they saying? What are they doing? And then we might spend a fair bit of time in the coaching conversation looking at options. Okay, so what choices do you have here? What resources? Who can you talk to? What can you do? What can you, inform yourself with, and so on. And we often spend a lot of time kind of swimming around the reality and the options, really exploring and unpacking a particular issue. Say, for example, I've had a coaching client just recently come to me around the issue of procrastination. And we realized as we unpacked it that what was driving that procrastination was a real fear of disappointing others. And so this sense of always wanting to please others meant that he was a bit sort of frozen and not making decisions that might have been the tough decisions as a leader. So we started to then unpack a little bit more what was driving that behavior of pleasing others. And that's where the psychology piece came into it. And as part of that conversation, looking at, okay, what's the way forward, as in what actions, what steps, what things are you going to do differently as a result of the insights that you've gained from this conversation. So I won't spend more time on that, but if you are interested in learning, really encourage you, as I mentioned, to check out that GROW framework. But it's a simple kind of framework that you can use in any conversation with anyone, where you're thinking, what are they wanting here? What's actually going on here? What are the options? And most of the time we actually help the other person work it out for themselves rather than giving advice. So what are your options here? Okay, what actions are you committed to taking? So it's a good one to sort of memorize. Another framework that we use in coaching is solution focused, and this again comes from psychology. So solution focused coaching, there's a lot more detail, and you learn how to apply this in the first coaching unit in this course. But we have this real goal orientation moving forward. What is it that you're wanting to change? And as part of that, there's a deliberate disengagement from the problem. So solution focused is not problem focused. We actually differentiate. And so this is actually a real mindset shift. And sometimes what happens is people get stuck with making change because they get problem focused. And part of what we can do in a coaching session is help them to look at, it's kind of linked in with the options in the GROW framework. Okay, what are the solutions? What are the options that you can actually do here? And then we focus more on what are the resources that you need to access to actually put into place that solution. So I wasn't going to give you that in too much detail. I don't want to sort of overwhelm you at this stage, but just want you to be aware that there's all these different approaches to coaching that once you have them in your kit bag, you'll be working with a client and you'll have a moment where you'll pull out your solution focused lens, a moment where you pull out your GROW lens, a moment when you pull out your psychodynamic lens, or your goal theory lens, or your motivation lens. There's all these different things that can inform that coaching conversation. So I'll just pause there and check if anyone had any questions or comments that I haven't noticed yet. So Kieran, in terms of leadership coaching and executive coaching, the two terms are often used interchangeably. Executive coaching certainly is coaching people at a more senior level. And so the course can equip people to do executive coaching, and I work at that level, and actually the educators in the lecturers in the course all work at that level. But what I would suggest is that to become a really good executive coach, one, it can certainly be helpful to have that level of experience in business if appropriate. So often we get people that have come from executive level positions that then learn coaching. And the other is, if someone's starting out as a coach and a leadership coach, they tend to work a lot more with, say, middle management, really understand some of the business drivers and some of the strategic issues and so on that are facing business, and really getting their coaching skills up and running before they move into executive coaching. So that's one answer to that question. And the other answer is that at this stage, this is the graduate certificate in coaching, but we do have plans to develop this into a graduate diploma and then a master's of coaching. And one of the units in either the graduate diploma or the master's course will be specifically focused on executive coaching, because there's different skills that are needed to coach very senior people, and to be able to build relationships with senior people. And but the other really is about understanding the pressures and the business drivers, and the fact that often executives can feel very high pressure and low reward sometimes, and not a lot of support. So there's a whole different skill set and business knowledge that's needed. So that will be built into the diploma or the master's level courses. But we do have one of the units at this level that's more focused on leadership. So hopefully, Kieran, that's helped answer your question. And so in terms of the next question about which path do I go in terms of counselling versus coaching, I can't answer that specifically, but my background was in counselling. Just to give you, RB, an indication as to what helped for me to shift was working a lot with people therapeutically. It does tend to be more one-on-one work, and working with individuals that are often, for me, it was privately paying clients. You can certainly work in organisations, say counselling organisations, but the coaching work has a more of a focus in working in businesses, in organisations where you're employed by, say, I've done some work for Accenture, the consulting company, and so they'll employ me to go in and do coaching work for their staff. So you're actually working with people in a different capacity, and your employer is different, whether or not you're full-time employed or working on a contractual basis. It's a different kind of role that you're working with. So that's some of the things to think about. The other thing that I tend to say to just describe the difference between therapy and coaching is coaching is very much forward-looking, whereas therapy often has more of a focus on resolving unresolved issues from the past. And so sometimes I'll have coaching clients that come to me that actually I realise they need some therapy, and I'll refer them on to have that therapy separate to the coaching sessions. Okay, so in terms of modalities, I'll come back to that, Nat Villa. I'll just touch on some of the modalities that we're going to be using in the coaching. So hopefully I'll answer that in another slide. All right, so in terms of what is coaching psychology, basically, and this is why this course differentiates itself from, say, life coaching, because we're very much only use modalities that have the evidence base behind it. So someone's gone and done the research, the randomized control trials, they've written the peer-reviewed article, they've proven that the particular technique does work. And that's why we can see in psychology is really a science of behaviour, because there is this real focus on evidence-based practices, and we use that evidence-based practice to really inform the coaching approach. So the only techniques that you're learning are the ones that have that evidence behind them. So there's extensive research to demonstrate that these particular approaches to coaching really do work. And then coaching psychology is using psychological principles, but in various settings, including workplace and leadership. So that's where there's that differentiation between using psychology for therapy compared to using, the way I describe it is psychology in the workplace. And, a big part of that is about our interpersonal skills, emotional intelligence, self-awareness, understanding our defensive patterns, and so on. There's quite a lot that informs the coaching psychology. Some of the coaching frameworks, to answer your question, Nat Villa, and this was just, I started, I didn't want to get too kind of technical in this sort of introduction, but I've already touched on the solution focused. We might use cognitive behavioural approaches to coaching. So that's looking at like cognitive behavioural therapy that informs psychology, looking at the links between thoughts, feelings and behaviours, and so on. Then there's a whole focus, which is more my speciality, in looking at developmental coaching. And this, it doesn't mean development in terms of the lifespan. There's a whole body of research that shows that adults actually continue to develop in their cognitive capacity, ability to understand concepts and map things, ability to see the interconnection between things, pattern making and so on. And so we can now actually map people's developmental trajectory. And we know some of the tensions that show up as people move from, say, for example, one developmental stage as being very much peer focused and wanting to fit in, which is more of it at the adolescent level. The research shows that lots of adults actually don't move on from that, but as they do and become much more autonomous, there's a whole lot of tensions that show up there that can be really important to help people to coach through. How do they still build relationships while being authentic? How do they find their voice and, you know, not piss everyone off, basically? How do they find what's right for them without feeling completely alienated, and so on? So there's all these developmental challenges that show up. Sometimes they show up for the individual, or sometimes it's a developmental issue showing up at work. And so the developmental coaching, there's some research that's been done, but it's really a very growing field, and it's quite exciting. And the reason why I think it's exciting, because part of that is looking at what's next. How do we keep growing once we've plateaued at a certain level? You know, how do we become people that really make a difference on this planet in terms of our ability to influence, our ability to find our voice, our ability to understand and work with complex problems, and so on. You can see I'm a bit passionate about developmental coaching. Coaching framework also influenced by positive psychology. So another way of thinking about that is strengths-based psychology. And there's quite a lot of really great research and using strengths-based and positive psychology in the workplace. Informed, of course, a lot of coaching is informed by sports performance and the focus on peak performance, and what we can learn from athletes and how that can be translated basically back into workplaces. So, you know, senior executives using insights from peak sports performance in their ability to navigate very high pressure environments and stay focused and juggle really complex and challenging situations and to not lose their cool. We've learned a lot from sports people around that. And just coming back to your question, I think it was Nat Villa, transactional analysis is not used a lot, actually, I must say, in coaching. That's probably is more something that's used at a therapy level, but definitely, I didn't touch on it here, a systemic approach to coaching. For me, I kind of assumed that that was sort of part of it, but yes, understanding systems and how they work, complex adaptive systems, is a key part of bringing about change in organisations. And so, yes, we do have there is some exploration of systemic coaching at the graduate certificate level, but that it will also be built out more in the graduate diploma level courses as well. In terms of asking employer for time off, Michelle, we haven't written, you know, a PDF, but I'm happy to have a one-on-one conversation with you around that. Or if anyone else has that same question, we can set up a time for a quick call or a Zoom call, just so I can support you individually around that conversation. I mean, the short answer and a general answer is that more and more we find that as people start to do this work, they bring a richness back into the workplace. There's a lot more emotional intelligence and maturity. There's ability to influence and get things done, to problem solve, to manage and lead people more effectively. So it's actually becoming more and more popular for workplaces to support people to do these kinds of coaching courses. In terms of developmental psychology, Nat Villa, that basically Maslow started the conversation around what a developmental trajectory looks like with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And then lots of people have built on it. Even a guy called Richard Barrett has done some great work on looking at how values map to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And you can do assessments with looking at where an organisation or an individual sits in their hierarchy of their values and how to help them grow. The idea that our values inform our thinking, which then informs our behaviour. And so when someone can start to see that their values might be very much survival based, not as much relationship based, then we might do some coaching around how to help for them to move through that. So hopefully I'm answering those questions. If I have missed any of those points, feel free to remind me and I'll come back to that. So lots of different coaching frameworks. And as I mentioned, we build on these over the duration of the course. So why would you study applied coaching or coaching psychology? As mentioned, proven techniques to support growth, change, and even transformation. And that this is a supplemental skill to support leaders, change agents, and therapists. So I was trying to work out how to say this in a way that didn't sound too clunky. what I mean is, if you're already working as a psychologist or a counsellor or a social worker, if you're a change agent trying to do some work, say, with the environment or socially, if you're a leader or a manager, the coaching skill is a really great supplement to all of those types of dynamics, because you're working with people and you'll learn things around motivation, change, growth, goal setting, helping people to shift through when they're resistant to change and so on, which can really help in all those different areas. And as mentioned, that the graduate certificate will build this into a graduate diploma and eventually into a master's over time. Who's the course for? So it is for professionals looking to transition into some kind of leadership coaching, or professionals looking to use coaching as part of their current practice. So as I mentioned, counsellors or psychologists and so on. It could be for coaches who are already working that want to get the ICF certification and much more in-depth knowledge and practice. It could be people, as mentioned in the sort of first point, but people in a kind of career transition with COVID. Lots of us have had disruption to our jobs or being out of work and so on, and maybe looking at upskilling. So I guess the good thing about coaching is that it's not necessarily starting from square one, that if someone is looking at some kind of career change and using coaching as part of that, then you're building on your knowledge of whatever it is that you were doing in the past, because the people skills, the business skills, the whatever it is your background, is always going to inform the kind of coaching you do. And you can end up then, based on your own background, you might find that it ends up influencing that you become a specialist coach in a certain area, for example, music, because you've got a background in music. So there's that translations can happen for each individual. Some suggested career pathways, and of course this list is not exhaustive, but we have people either working in human resources or getting jobs in human resources and people and cultural programs, either as a full-time or part-time employee, or as I've been doing, I consult to HR and people and culture. They bring me in as a subcontractor, basically, where I'll do bespoke kind of programs that'll help them to really shift the culture in their organisations. We might do leadership development. We might do use psychometric assessments as part of a coaching program. We might do mindset changing. I'm working in a bank at the moment, helping them shift their mindset around a certain issue. So lots of really great, really cool work that gets done there. As mentioned, you might be an internal leadership coach within an organisation. So some people are lucky enough to be employed full-time. Their whole job all day, every day is coaching people within an organisation and really building the capability of teams and working with talent development and so on. You might, of course, have private coaching practice. You might have a combination of all of these. You might consult to organisations, run things like workshops and that sort of thing, and any other professional services such as facilitation and education. So coaching kind of is like an umbrella where you might work with individuals, groups, teams, and it also has a kind of educational arm to it as well. So I'll just pause there and check if anyone had any questions that I've missed. In terms of the master's program being available, Kieran, it won't be until next year, just in terms of the process. So we'll get the graduate diploma. The plan is to get the graduate diploma going by either trimester 2 or trimester 3 of this year, and then build the master's in after that. So it becomes like a progression. We're expecting current students will keep going with us in their enrolment. And so, yes, so Trudy, the graduate diploma and masters, that's yet to be built. It's in the process of being mapped and built. And the plan is that that'll be, so when you do the graduate certificate, you can start working as a coach and then keep studying, possibly part-time. And I saw that Miles had answered that and Trudy had said thank you. So I've kind of replicated that. So hopefully that's answered that question. All right. So the graduate certificate in applied coaching, just coming back to that. The course, as I mentioned, is taught by experienced executive and leadership coaches. We use evidence-based theories of change management. There's a focus on applied knowledge that can be immediately used in the workplace. And the current cohort has been extremely positive. Almost everyone has enrolled for the next 2 units that we're offering this trimester. One of the ways that that I teach and work is very much bringing people together. So there's a key part in working with other people, trying to overcome the isolation of online learning, and really sort of learning and building networks and working with others in a way that's not just you come, you listen to a talk fest and then you go again. So much more interactive. Entry criteria. So we say a degree in a cognate, and that's a bit of a clumsy word. What we really mean is a similar discipline. So if you've got a degree in anything that's psychology, social work, counselling, leadership, business, management, there's probably a few others that I've forgotten, then having an undergraduate degree means you can apply to a graduate certificate straight away. But we also now have a new entry criteria, which is you actually don't need to have a degree if you have 5+ years experience in some kind of leadership. So working as a manager or working in a professional experience in, say, some leadership capacity, human resources, people management. So this means that you can actually apply to the graduate certificate without having the degree. And then if you get at least a credit point average, which is pretty easy to get, I must say, because we really support you in your studies, then you can keep going into the diploma and even get a master's degree without having to have gone through and got a bachelor's degree. So it is a new pathway that basically the Australian government has been supporting for people studying. In terms of grade point average for the 3-year degree, Kieran, no, we don't actually go on GPA, grade point average. It's just looking at the whether or not you have a degree in what we're saying is a similar discipline. If it's completely not similar, for example, chemistry, then we would hope that you've got some experience in management, leadership, and so on top of that, because we are presuming a certain level of knowledge right from the start. So if someone has a completely non-cognate degree and no background, then probably best to have a conversation with me and we'll just check if there's a right fit, because I don't want anyone to feel like they're, drowning in the course. Okay, so in terms of the hours per week, Miles has said 10 to 12 hours in your own time per week. To be honest, that's generous. I know lots of people are working full time, and if you see 10 to 12 hours, you might freak out. You might find that you do more hours when an assignment is due, and then in between that, you might do less. So on a weekly basis to keep up, there's 2 readings a week that we're wanting you to look at. So that could be up to maybe 2 hours a week just to see if you can get that reading done before class. That's at an absolute minimum, and you won't get as much out of the course if you're not spending more time. And then you might find that, as I said, you spend a whole weekend doing your assignment, and that's where it sort of evens out. So for those of you who are working full time, just knowing that we're expecting you to read a couple of papers before class and to think about the content, and then just to have time to do the 2 assessments. I'll take you through the assessments, I think is in the next couple of slides. And in terms of it being an Australian degree, I'm not sure how I pronounce your name, Hoi Yen. Hopefully I haven't pronounced it incorrectly. Those individual conversations, touch base with Miles, and if he needs to clarify anything with me, he can. It needs to be an academically recognised degree, so not necessarily exclusively Australian, but if the degree is in, say, a different language, we need someone to officially transcribe your academic transcription. Oh, good, I pronounced it correctly. Great, thanks. So entry criteria, we've got the degree or the experience, and I'll come back to your question in a sec, Aisling. And just in terms of the duration, excuse the background noise, I have a 3-month-old puppy who I'm trying to distract. Might not have worked. So the duration is that most people do either 1 or 2 units per trimester. Hang on a sec, I've just got to help out the little puppy. Sorry about that. Okay, so most students will do either 2 units per trimester, or to answer, Puppy needs some coaching. Yeah, I agree actually. To answer your question, Aisling, some people working full time decide just to do 1 unit at a time. So it really does depend on you. We also have the census date, which is about 3 weeks into the course. So you can enroll into both units, kind of get an idea as to what it's like. You get access to the readings and so on. And if you need to, then you can actually withdraw from, say, one of the units before census date without any financial penalty, and then you might just come back to that in the next trimester. So some people have said 2 units is manageable. Other people have said a lot. It also depends on your current work and how responsible you have to be and how demanding it is and so on. Okay, so this is the sort of snapshot of the actual course. There's the codes there if you need them for the enrolment process. But the main thing is that the description is we've got basically we start the course. I teach this unit on fundamentals of coaching theory and practice, and that's on Mondays from 4 till 7 p.m. Sydney time. And in that, we're looking at, goal setting, motivation, and all the evidence-based practice behind, how we work with people. You're learning straight away, right at the beginning, how to actually coach people. In this next unit, so often people do these 2 units together, coaching for professional wellbeing and resilience. This is coaching informed by strength-based and positive psychology. And so we've got this on Wednesday. So if you're doing both units, it's sort of, you've got a day off, an evening off in between. And so this is, as I mentioned, you're learning about Martin Seligman's work. You're looking at how you can use strength-based and positive psychology in the workplace. How to address the issue of wellbeing and resilience at work is a really key issue at the moment. And then the other 2 units, so we're considering these, often people will do the first 2 and then these 2 later. Coaching for sustainable leadership is very much focused on the kinds of issues that leaders are faced, and the different theories of leadership and what it looks like, what good leadership looks like. And then the final one, I've got an asterisk there, the applied coaching skills, because the prerequisite is you need to have at least done the fundamentals of coaching theory and practice unit before you do applied, because that one is very much the ICF criteria, and you focused on practicing and getting individual supervision and mentoring and peer supervision, lots and lots of feedback to really fine tune your coaching in that particular unit. And you can see the times for those ones. All right, so this is a question from earlier today, so I thought I'd bring it in. In terms of the assessment requirements, because I know it can be a part of your decision making, most units consist of 2 essays about 2,000 words each. They focus, one is on kind of a theory, and then the other will be a case study. So I've written this knowing that, because I studied full time and it was hard, doing the assignments on the weekends and at night and so on. It's written in a way to, as I say, support your study and not make it too onerous. And as mentioned, assignments are scaffolded in class. So basically we'll be talking in the very first class, this is the assignment, this is what we're looking for, this is what to look out for, these are the resources and so on. I'd love to show you my puppy. I will actually have to get him from outside in a minute. I'll bring him up to camera if he's not going to wiggle too much. So in terms of the assessments, let's not get distracted. So a few people have asked, there's no exams, and at least at the graduate certificate level, there's no group assignments, although I'm not sure if we'll build that in. We probably will build that into more of the units where we're looking at systems theory, because it can be really helpful to get an experience of that in group assignments. But very much the focus on the learning is about giving and receiving coaching throughout the course. And so the receiving coaching bit is actually a benefit. You can bring to class something you're struggling with and someone can coach you through it. So there's that element of sort of personal growth and development that happens as well. All right, nearly finished. The core skills is really about applying psychology principles in a personal and workplace setting. So you're learning about how our psychology works, those of you who are not familiar yet. You learn how to develop leadership capability. I think this is another really great thing. What does a good leader look like? What are the attributes? How do we, first of all, unpack those attributes? How do we measure them? So we'll talk about psychometric assessments. And then how do we coach people to develop these attributes? And then how do we develop these skills ourselves? You learn about applying evidence-based techniques around goal setting and behavioural change. And in this final unit, there's this real focus on understanding the core competencies and ethical standards of the ICF. In terms of the role plays, we tend to the role plays is more like a real live demonstration. So I can do a demonstration. Well, I'll coach someone in the class and everyone can watch, that kind of thing. Or you get to coach each other and you have someone giving you, we set it up in a way so the feedback's really safe, but you have someone giving you really positive and constructive feedback. But we don't tend to do role plays in the sense of acting out roles, if that's what you meant, Lizzie. Okay, what you'll get out of the course, you'll certainly develop personally and professionally. So there's a focus on self-reflection. You receive supervision, mentoring and peer support. Deep understanding of psychology and the applied aspect of it for behaviour change. Coaching skills to help you and those around you to flourish during times of challenge. And networking with other professionals using coaching in organisational settings. So also wanted just to flag that at ACAP, we do have undergraduate training in coaching, and that's in the Bachelor of Counselling course. There's a minor in coaching. That is also an ICF credentialed course. There's a focus on life coaching in that rather than leadership coaching. And that is for those without an undergraduate degree and those who don't have the 5 years workplace experience. And it is actually at a bachelor academic level, so what we'd call AQF 7, for those of you who know about AQF standards. The graduate certificate is at AQF 8. That's the link if you're interested. So it's slightly less academic, slightly less demanding because it's at a bachelor level rather than at a postgraduate level. And then that's one difference. The other difference is the focus a bit more on life coaching rather than leadership coaching. All right, so for more detail, fees, and to contact a course advisor, that's the website, and that's my email address. And in terms of how to set up a coaching practice, how to charge, record keeping and that kind of thing, yes, in the final unit, the applied aspect, we do cover those practical elements as much as we can in a general way, because each person's will be different, but we can certainly talk about ballpark type of fees and those kinds of things as well. So if those of you who are interested in next steps, I'm going to leave you to quickly read those next steps while I go and rescue my puppy from outside, because I don't know what he's doing. Hang on a sec. And this is my puppy, if you can see with that background. Oh, there he is. He is cute. Okay, so in terms of how to apply, so there's the application form on our website, and then a course advisor can take you through that process. And Miles, I can see that, where's my mouse? I've lost it. Miles has said, you can submit an application for May, and then Miles has got his email address there, so he can touch base with you. So email him directly and he can follow up with you tomorrow. So really encourage you to, any questions that you've got, either we can cover them now, or thanks Aisling, I do have a lovely COVID puppy. But yes, really encourage you to either jump in now with your questions. We've got a few minutes left. Otherwise we might have an early mark, or or touching base with Miles and the course advisor teams. All right, so it looks like there's no questions. If anyone wants to unmute and ask a question, you're welcome as well. All right, so
I actually have one for you, B. It's Miles.
Yes, sure, Miles. Yep.
I'm currently enrolled in our career development practices one.
Yep.
I have a military experience, and then I have a recruitment and employment background. And now I work here for the last 4 and a bit years. How would I be looking at qualifying for, say, this coaching course?
So I'd need to have probably a bit more concentrated conversation with you in terms of each individual person. But what we're looking for in that 5 years experience, if you don't have the undergraduate experience, is that you have an understanding of the challenges of leadership, that you've worked in a role where it's involved managing people, or some kind of supervisory kind of capacity, and so on. So yeah, but happy to have that conversation separately, unless you're asking in a more of a general way, Miles.
It was more of a general way, but also just in case people hadn't asked. But it was also partly to do with my interest as well.
Yeah, so I'm happy to talk to you one-on-one about that, and for anyone else in terms of specifics. We certainly are trying to set this up in a way to not create barriers for entry, but we also don't want people to start the course and they feel overwhelmed. So it's about getting that balance right. Okay, so if there's no other questions, I think we'll finish there a few minutes early, and I really appreciate your time, and hopefully that's given you a really good understanding of the course. As I said, love to have I've been talking to lots of people on the phone or via Zoom about this. If you've got any more questions, either contact me or the admission team. Thanks, everyone.
Are you able to leave? Yeah. Are you able to leave this open for a little bit, B, so that I can, if they want to ask questions, I can still be here?
Absolutely, and I can still be here as well. But for anyone else, really appreciate your time and wish you all the very best.
Thanks, B.
Thanks.